Hi everyone, very good evening. Welcome to BYJU'S exam prep. Can you hear and see me clearly, everybody? If you could quickly confirm that. Very good evening. So good to see all of you back. My name is Alpa Sharma, and in this session, we shall be talking about sources, books, things to refer to if you're preparing for CLAT 2023. That's going to happen 22 December. If you could quickly confirm that I'm clearly audible and visible, we shall commence with the session very quickly. Hi Aditi, hi Anil, very good evening. Yes, looks like I'm clearly audible and visible. Okay, so I had already planned a class which I've already had with you on exactly what books you could read, what novels you could read if you're specifically preparing for CLAT pertaining to English language only. In today's session, I shall be recommending books and sources to you for all other subjects. So I'll be recommending books, sources for English, reasoning, GK, maths, legal as well, all of these. So we're going to be talking about those sources. I'll exactly tell you what you're supposed to read, how you're supposed to read, how frequently are you supposed to read, all of that. That's exactly what we're going to be talking about. If you haven't seen my session on which books to read, which novels to read for English, which newspapers to read, make sure you watch that session. I am glad, Lakshmi, you read that book. I hope you liked that. Let's quickly move on with the agenda of the session, that is books and study material that we need to refer to for CLAT 2023. Before we proceed, a quick reminder that December 18 is going to be your CLAT paper, ailet the very next week we have your ailet paper. Both the examinations are going to be conducted in the month of December 2022, even if you're targeting 2023. So the cycle changes this year and it's going to be offline examination. If God is going to be happy with us, it's going to be an offline examination. If COVID doesn't let us take an offline examination, it might be online, but for now, we believe it's going to be offline because God is great. God is going to help us and keep us away from COVID. So we're going to stick to pen and paper mode of examination. Now, see, there are a few things that we can, जो हम draw कर सकते हैं, जो हम conclude कर सकते हैं, from the last 2-3 years paper that we have seen. और जो चीज हम conclude कर सकते हैं, वो है कि one, your entire paper is reading based. So आपका language पे और reading पे command is absolutely necessary. You need to be somebody who in a fixed, stipulated, less amount of time is able to read something, process it, retain it, and answer questions. So not merely comprehend it completely, but even if you're able to understand the gist, understand what exactly is the author saying, और आप उसको retain कर सकते हो questions answer करते time पे बहुत जल्दी, you are going to be getting through this examination. So आपका ability to read is absolutely really important. Ma'am, I really need to talk to you. Can you please check my message in Telegram? Okay, Sijan, I'm going to do that in a couple, maybe tomorrow. Good reminder, thank you. So gist क्या निकाला कि reading तो necessary है because the entire paper, all the sections, it expects us to be readers. So क्या पढ़ें? I mean, I've recommended books to you, I've recommended novels to you, I've recommended newspapers to you, but is there something else that we can read specifically एक section को लेके? Yes, I've got those sources enlisted here. We're going to talk about that. So of course, this is important for the entire paper. From the perspective of current affairs and legal, we need to be really regular with the current issues that are happening because GK not completely, but majorly current based होता है. और स्टैटिक का पोर्शन बहुत ज्यादा नहीं आता, अगर आता भी है तो स्पेसिफिकली एलेट में थोड़ा आता है, बट क्लैट बहुत फोकस नहीं होता टुवर्ड्स द स्टैटिक जीके. लीगल अफेयर्स भी जो आपके आते हैं वो it wants you to be aware of what's happening around you. So your regularity with the newspapers, of course, इससे हम ड्रॉ कर सकते हैं that you have to read newspapers very regularly. About legal, you need to know what's happening, you need to know the current affairs of law, you need to know what's the basic principles of law. आपको समझ में आना चाहिए law का concept, ये आपका law में needed होता है. For English, of course, बहुत अच्छा command आपका language पे होना चाहिए, vocab पे होना चाहिए. Grammar पे फिर भी इतना important नहीं है. आप after the new pattern that has emerged, but older pattern grammar आपको देता था, new pattern completely on reading and your vocabulary. So these two things, they need to be really good, specifically reading. और reading आपका poor होगा अगर आपका vocabulary poor है. So eventually ये दोनों चीजें आपको टेस्ट करते हैं. So eventually your ability to comprehend with a logical bent of mind. If you have these two, you're going to be getting through this examination. Now the question is exactly ये आएगा एग्जाम में तो पढ़ना क्या है, कैसे पढ़ेंगे, कहां से पढ़ेंगे is the question. Let's start talking about each section one by one. Okay, my favorite. Let's start talking about English language. 20% weightage is given to this section in CLAT. A little more in ailet, and I'm glad with the new pattern ailet has emerged with. अब ये जो 20% weightage CLAT देता है इंग्लिश के सेक्शन को, English section is not merely confined to this 20% weightage. Would you agree with me, everyone? Would you agree with me कि 20% weightage तो मैंने मार्क्स का अलॉटमेंट डिफाइन कर दिया कि 20% weightage हमने CLAT में इंग्लिश को दे दिया. But is English actually confined to only these 20%? What would you have to say about this? I'd like to know that from all of you. Is English confined to this 20% weightage? No, certainly not. Absolutely not. Because ये रीडिंग आपको लीगल में भी मिलेगी, जीके में भी मिलेगी, मैथ्स में भी मिल सकती है, ऑफ कोर्स क्रिटिकल रीजनिंग में भी मिलेगी. So English is not confined to these, absolutely, I could say 100% to English. Okay? Because अगर आपका इंग्लिश पुअर है तो आपके लिए उन सारे पैसेजेस को कॉम्प्रिहेंड करना उतना ही डिफिकल्ट हो जाएगा जो लॉ में, लीगल में भी आए हैं, रीजनिंग में भी आए हैं, जीके में भी आए हैं. आपको समझना पड़ेगा उनको. So basically, let's now get back to the English language section. I could say 100% weightage given to English language, but still 20% according to the marks allotted to it. क्या पूछता है एग्जामिनर आपसे? The examiner basically asks you passages. आपको उसको comprehend करना है, questions answer करने हैं, as easy as that, but not so easy because the passages are going to be tricky, the questions are going to be full of inference. Now, since ये चीजें आपसे पूछती है, हम 3 कैटेगरीज में डिवाइड करते हैं एग्जामिनेशन में. आपसे इंग्लिश के सेक्शन में what all are the sections that are being tested? So they would predominantly test grammar, vocabulary and comprehension. Grammar, vocab, if at all it comes, it would come in relation to the comprehension. So you would have indirect questions, questions stemming out of comprehensions, reading comprehensions on indirect grammar or indirect vocabulary. There rarely has been direct question on grammar in the last few years. Vocabulary, we have indirect ones through the passage. So these are the predominant 3 areas which the examiner would test us on. Now, what do I do so that I'm able to master these 3? What do I read? This, ta-da, you've been waiting for it for quite some time. This is the list that I have that I recommend highly for vocabulary and grammar, and I'm going to recommend some books for RCs in the next page. For vocabulary, this becomes my most favorite. I highly recommend this book. And sometimes students think कि मैम आपको कोई commission मिलता है क्या for recommending this book? That's not true. That's absolutely not true. While I was a student, I read this book and I highly promote this book because it's based on a methodology that helps us retain vocabulary for a longer period of time. And that is etymology. So you could do word power made easy. You could also do 30 days to a more powerful vocabulary. Any one of the books would work fine. Word power made easy, my favorite. So either of the books, you could also do 6 weeks to word power. Any one of these books would do for vocabulary. Remember, vocabulary is not confined to synonyms and antonyms. Vocabulary also talks about idioms and phrases. I would recommend you buy a simple book, any good book that's available on Amazon, Flipkart, any of the good bookstores on idioms and phrases. The good part is you don't have to memorize idioms and phrases for over and over and over again. If you once read the meaning of an idiom and you link it to some reference, retention of idioms, it becomes really easy. So I'd highly recommend you buy any book, any simple one, and keep reading 10 idioms per day. Even if you're able to retain 5 of them, you've won the battle. So any decent book on idioms and phrases would do. For grammar, of course, it has to be the the legendary red book, Wren and Martin. I could recommend one more book to you, and that's called Raymond Murphy. Okay, so you could, if you have Wren and Martin, stick to it. If you do not, you could also buy Raymond Murphy. The only hitch is Wren and Martin doesn't have the answers to the questions in the same book. So you have to either buy or find a separate answer key that comes for Wren and Martin's questions. So there are two books. One is for theory and questions and the other is for the answers. Make sure you buy the answers as well. Otherwise, you'll not be able to understand Wren and Martin at all. You'll not be able to understand if you've marked questions correctly or not. Hi, Krishna. So Raymond Murphy, Wren and Martin, either of the books would do. I would highly recommend this one as well. So these are the books for vocabulary and grammar. Now let's talk about RCs. Since RC is predominantly what's going to be asked in the examination, RC में क्या करना चाहिए? I expect you to practice RCs every single day. Okay? At least one RC आपको रोज करना चाहिए. दो भी कर सकते हो आप. बहुत अच्छा है दो कर सकते हो तो, because आपको reading की habit होनी चाहिए. RCs कहाँ से करेंगे? I'll start from the order of the most important ones. सबसे ज्यादा important priority पे आपको क्या करना है? मेरे हिसाब से सबसे priority पे start with the previous year papers. CLAT, ailet. If you can land your hands upon the previous year's NLS papers, NALSAR papers, WBNUJS papers, brilliant, nothing better than that. How you can find these papers? You have to send it, there's a procedure that these websites mention. Please find these papers. Your priority is to solve these. If you can't find these, it's absolutely okay. The pattern was pretty old. My idea is to only find RCs from these papers and solve them. So first thing first, 2008 onwards, CLAT के सारे papers आपको solve करने हैं. बहुत ध्यान से, specifically 2011 का paper solve कर लेना please. And come back and say thank you to me for that. Okay? तो सारे पेपर्स सबसे पहले प्रायोरिटी पे क्लैट के सॉल्व करो, एलेट के सॉल्व करो. अगर आपने प्रीवियस पेपर नहीं करे तो आपके लिए जी मैट, एलसैट, अरुण शर्मा और कोई भी और मैं आपको गाइड बताऊं, यूनिवर्सल बताऊं, ये सब यूजलेस होंगे. तो अगर आपने ये कर लिया है, दैट्स व्हेन यू शुड जंप ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट थिंग. रिमेंबर माय वर्ड्स, आई कीप सेइंग दिस ओवर एंड ओवर अगेन. डोंट बी अ होर्डर. होर्डर नहीं बनना. मुझे होर्ड नहीं करना है कि ये भी पेपर ले आता हूं, वो भी पेपर ले आता हूं, सॉल्व कुछ नहीं करूंगा. नो. सबसे पहले क्लैट, एलेट, प्रीवियस ईयर पेपर्स. I am not a lawyer, Sanjana. I'm not a lawyer. Okay. So ultimately, CLAT, AILET के पेपर सॉल्व करो. Once you've done that, फिर बोलो अच्छा मैम मुझे और बुक्स बताइए. मैं आपको बताती हूँ. LSAT papers. Why? Because these are pretty close to the latest pattern of CLAT. More inclined towards critical reasoning, critical reading, RCs. Length, kind of questions, pretty similar to the latest CLAT pattern. These papers are easily available online. You can buy a book for LSAT papers, go to a second-hand bookstore, ask them for LSAT papers, it should be available. Delhi रहते हो, दरियागंज मार्केट जाओ, सुबह संडे को उठ के जाओ, wholesale में books लेके आओ. You'll find these papers, you'll find GMAT books as well. So, LSAT papers. Then, reading comprehension book by Arun Sharma. I would recommend the book for CAT. अब आपको लगेगा मैम ये तो बहुत डिफिकल्ट हो गया. होगा डिफिकल्ट, बट मेरे हिसाब से आप ऑलरेडी ये चीज कर चुके होगे. Since you've already done that, you wouldn't find this very difficult. You would say, ma'am, why do I solve something that's for CAT? How does it make sense for me? It does, because you've already done the simpler ones. God forbid, if something extremely difficult comes in the examination, you should be prepared for that as well. Easy आ जाएगा तो हर कोई कर लेगा. Difficult आएगा तो आप कर पाओगे, not everyone else. Remember that. So you should be prepared for the difficult ones, and the answer keys to these books are authentic. I wouldn't recommend any other book because I am not sure about their answer keys. So stick to this. Any one of these would do. Okay. Now let's move on to the next one. Of course, needless to say, please be regular with the newspapers. Hindu, Indian Express, any one of these two. No third one. Regularly, every single day. Editorials पढ़ना है. every Friday or Saturday editorial class mein aana hai for English. Remember that, okay? FYI, this Friday there's not going to be a Hindu class. I mean, the Hindu class that editorial classes that I take. Saturday I would be taking one. I'm on leave on Friday. So back to it. The Hindu, the Indian Express, thoroughly. And when I say for reading comprehension, it has to be the editorial page only. Frontline, Aeon being my favorite. I'm going to draw a heart around that. It's my favorite. Please read at least 2 articles from Aeon every single week. You could read international newspapers and magazines. You could read the Guardian, the New York Times. You could read any one of these, intermittently one article. Okay, nothing on American politics, British politics, please skip that. Okay, so ultimately stick to the international articles only that talk about international issues, law related, climate related, those. And needless to say, watch our free videos on our app, download our app and watch our free videos on our YouTube channel as well. That's about English. Now let's move on to the next subject, logical reasoning. You know, 20% weightage is given to logical reasoning, and the inclination in logical reasoning is mostly towards critical thinking. Okay, Usha, we're still waiting for it. We hope it's going to be out pretty soon. The notification isn't out yet. The moment it's out, we're going to post a video on our channel. So stick with us. All right, others. So 20% weightage given to logical reasoning, and it's more inclined towards critical thinking, not merely numbers, but thinking critically. So ultimately, it's a section that's pretty close to the English language section. You have passages and you have to read. And that's not only about CLAT. Lately, you've seen ailet moving towards the same pattern. Lots and lots and lots of reading. Meager questions, very, very few on mathematical reasoning, a lot on critical reasoning. We have passages, you have to answer questions, strengthening, weakening questions, you could be conclusion questions. Exactly these are the topics that are going to be judged. Since they also ask you to comprehend a passage, think about it, read between the lines, infer things that are otherwise not stated, it needs a lot of reading to be done. What can I read to improve logical reasoning section? Let's quickly have a look. This is the only place where I teach, Sanjana. Let's have a look at books and materials for critical reasoning. My favorite, MKD sir's favorite, the GMAT guide. If you think it's very expensive, you can easily find it in a second-hand bookstore. Find this, solve this. Keep it like your gospel. Keep it like your Bible. Please be very careful with analyzing each question. Every question. If you've marked D but the answer was C, why is D not the answer and why did I eliminate C? What was wrong with my reasoning? If you use this approach to solve this book, you would probably not need anything else. You can also solve LSAT papers. That's a notch easier than the GMAT guide because GMAT guide is, of course, for the postgraduate program. You could solve LSAT papers as well, and of course, you have many sessions that keep happening on our app and on our YouTube channel as well. You could attend them as well. So make sure you've downloaded our app. Other sources, they have to be reading newspapers regularly so that you have a logical bend of mind, because that is something that cannot be taught. I can teach you what an assumption is, but how do I teach you to be more logical? You have to develop that inclination towards logic. So for that, you have to critically read every article that you see in an editorial. Asking questions, why, how, when. When you ask these questions to an editorial, when you read them, when you read articles from these magazines, when you watch our classes, that's when you have a logical bend of mind. So remember, asking questions, what, how, when. That's how you develop a logical bent of mind. So that's my suggestion for books and materials for reasoning section. Let's now move on to legal reasoning. So ailet has actually merged these sections. CLAT still keeps them intact. I'm going to have a sip of water and then continue with the legal reasoning section, and we'll see what can be done here. By the time, did you hit the like button? If you haven't done that yet, please do that. Share button, share this video with your friends who don't know what to study for CLAT, what books to refer to, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. All right. For legal reasoning, mostly the questions are principle based, and a big weightage, 25% of it, is given to legal reasoning, and it's going to be a tiebreaker as well for your selection if the scores are equal. That's the first tiebreaker that we have. So ultimately, here, if the questions are mostly principle based, again, can I say it majorly tests our reading ability and our logical bend of mind? Precisely, yes. What exactly am I supposed to know here? I'm supposed to read some extract, read some principle, apply it to the situation given to me. So I need to have a basic understanding of how law functions. I need to know some basic laws, principles, how I can apply it to general scenario, and then of course use my logical reasoning ability to come to a solution, to come to a result from the options that I have. What do I read to master this section? So, highly recommended Universal's CLAT guide. This book has a lot of previous year questions. I would recommend you solve the legal reasoning questions from this book. There are many tests that are available on our app as well. You can download our app and solve those tests. Also, AP Bharadwaj has a book on legal awareness and legal aptitude. You could solve that book also for solving questions. So it's basically a warehouse of questions where you could get many questions. You could solve that book as well. But apart from getting questions from these sources, is there anything else that I need to know that will improve my understanding of how law functions? Yes. Knowing the basic of our Indian constitution. What is our constitution? What are the parts of it? Knowing that. And the current affairs that relate to legal reasoning. That is what's happening around the world in terms of it being inclined towards law. So for that, I need to read the newspapers regularly. I could refer to some other websites as well. These are Bar and Bench, Live Law and others. You could refer to these websites for the legal updates, legal cases, legal judgments that are going on, the current ones that are going on throughout the world. Please refer to the series that we bring every day, every week, every month on what's happening around the world pertaining to law on our website, on our app as well as our YouTube channel. So make sure you follow these. We keep updating about what's happening around the world in terms of law. Let's talk about current affairs. अच्छा, current affairs में किसको refer करना है? I'm sure you know this. Current affairs के लिए you have to Arihan's CLAT guide, Lakshmi, you could solve that. If you have the book, you could stick to it. Okay? All right. So current affairs. Do I have to say you have to attend Sally sir's classes for current affairs? Apart from that, if you've been attending those, remember इसका बहुत बड़ा weightage है और current affairs में newspapers पढ़ना, editorials पढ़ना, regularly ignite पढ़ना, I don't think इससे ज़्यादा मैं कुछ recommend कर सकती हूँ आपको. I can recommend some books to you for static. But अगर आप इन दो चीजों के साथ regular है ना, that is newspapers पढ़ना और ignite और monthly GK PDF follow करना. You don't need a third source. आपको कुछ नहीं चाहिए और. That should suffice. I can recommend some more to you if you want, but इतना बहुत होगा. That is newspapers ध्यान से पढ़ना, रोज पढ़ना, उससे जीके निकालना, उसके नोट्स बनाना, उनको रिवाइज करना और उनको एज ए टेस्ट देखना इग्नाइट में और मंथली जीके पीडीएफ्स में. इतना सफिशिएंट होता है आपके जीके को टॉप नॉच रखने के लिए. डेली करंट अफेयर्स अपडेट्स आते हैं ऐप में, उनको फॉलो कर लो, मंथली इग्नाइट कर लो, मंथली जीके पीडीएफ फॉलो कर लो. दैट इज ऑल. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, क्योंकि कुछ static related current आ सकता है, you have to follow all the government websites for the latest updates. So you can follow these websites. You could follow a magazine Free Press Journal for the updates, which you might have missed out on in the newspapers. But otherwise ये जो updates देते हैं वो newspaper में जरूर आते हैं. वहां से मिस हो जाता है तो आप यहाँ से कर सकते हो. These are the additional sources that you could do. The other thing that I don't have to repeat is that you have to be regular with our sessions on our app and our YouTube channel. Last but not the least, what do we do for quant? Not a lot of weightage, only 10%. और सिर्फ 10 तक की मैथ्स अगर आती है अच्छे से आपको तो आप ये क्वेश्चंस कर सकते हैं। 10th तक की मैथ्स करनी है, कहां से करेंगे? एनसीईआरटी बुक से करेंगे। और कहां से करेंगे? देखो एवरेज है, रेशियो प्रोपोर्शन है, परसेंटेज है, प्रॉफिट लॉसेस सब स्कूल में कराया 10th तक में, उसको रिवाइज ही तो करना है। स्टार्ट विद बेसिक 9th से 10th की एनसीईआरटी बुक, द फर्स्ट थिंग दैट आई विल रिकमेंड। उसका implication to the kind of objective questions we see in CLAT, you could find them in RS Agarwal. So you could solve more furthermore, but priority is understanding the concepts from the NCERT book. Uska furthermore application to objective questions, quantitative aptitude by RS Agarwal. Elementary mathematics and numeric ability भी solve कर सकते हो। कोई और बुक भी ले सकते हो जहां थोड़ा डेटा इंटरप्रिटेशन है। बहुत ज्यादा डेटा इंटरप्रिटेशन आता नहीं है एग्जाम में, बट जो थोड़ा बहुत आता है वो आप किसी भी नॉर्मल डीआई की बुक से सॉल्व कर सकते हो। इन अ नटशेल, व्हाट आई एक्सपेक्ट यू टू डू इज, आई एक्सपेक्ट यू टू read a lot, pay attention at the priority to all the previous year papers, take your mock tests very sincerely, take topic tests, sectional tests, so that you can align what you've been doing. Make sure you don't skip reading newspapers at all. Everything else is secondary. Keep practicing so that you know if you've been doing things in the right track. Keep revising. Do not skip mock tests at all. Every week there are new tests that are being uploaded. हर week test देना start कर दो. Till CLAT happens, रोज एक नया, हर वीक एक नया मॉक अपलोड होगा, ध्यान से देना so that you know if you've been working in the right direction or not. That is all for today, everyone. Make sure you've liked the session, make sure you've shared the session, make sure you've subscribed to the channel, make sure you comment under the video if you found the list useful. I shall see you again with my editorial analysis class on Saturday. Have a very, very good day, everyone. God bless you.